You're gonna
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
well, good evening, everyone. Here we are again with Talk It Therapy.
It is Talk Therapy Live, and we are coming before you with what I'm describing as a juicy topic tonight.
It is.
Juicy because we have heard this term, situationship. And over the past 3 years, I have found that when people are describing their relationship or their couple dyad, whatever you want to call it, they use this word situationship.
Mm.
And I had no idea what that meant. I had to ask, what is a situationship? Who's over
I
time?
agree.
Had you heard that before?
No, I had never heard that term.
Had never
Um,
heard that term?
yeah, and I guess somebody was talking to me about being in someone they were dating, and I just asked, how serious it was, where it was going, and their reply said, "Well, we're just kind of in a situationship." And I thought I misheard what they said.
And so
So
that
I'm
has,
looking forward to this conversation tonight. I hope that you all are too. And also, however you're viewing this, make sure you share it. Candy, when you first put this out, one of the things I did, I shared it with all of my single nieces and nephews.
okay,
So I hope that they will join either now or either via replay. I hope that they come on and that they're here with us tonight.
absolutely, because this is so necessary. And as I said, it's a term that's being used over and over. And what I have kind of learned and discovered is that there are certain characteristics to a situationship,
Mm-hmm.
which is very, very different than what I have always taught and what I have always believed was the goal in terms of relationship, and that being a covenant relationship.
Right.
Being a godly woman, a Christian woman, kind of taught about relationship through the lens of, biblical understanding, I always taught and thought about covenant relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've come to learn is that there's a significant difference between a covenant relationship and a situationship. So I really
It
tonight want to
is.
kind of
Yeah.
delve into that and talk about some of the differences because they're very different.
They
And
are.
yeah, and
Yeah.
in dating, go
Yeah.
ahead.
You don't even hear, you never hear people say, unless they're talking specifically about marriage, that we're in a covenant relationship. And so, there are some words that people use to describe relationships that are common words that you just use every day. There are those you make up, like situationship, which I don't think is a real word.
It's
Um,
not-
but the word covenant surely is. And so this is going to be good because tonight Candy's going to talk a lot about, what covenant even means. What does that mean? And what does it mean when we say we're in a covenant relationship? So I'm looking forward to this. Um,
yes. So we
yeah,
want to pull you in. Again, join us, share on your Facebook, share on your other platforms because we really want to have a lively discussion and I want to bring you in because I want to hear from you in terms
yeah.
of have you found yourself in a situationship and have you ever used that word to describe your connection to someone else? And what
Hmm.
does that actually mean? When you
Yeah,
use that word, what were you describing? And what was your intention or definition in terms of a situationship?
yeah.
So,
That was going to
love
be
to
my
hear
first
from you.
question. If that everybody get ready to fess up, be real. If you have used the word situationship to describe a relationship that you are having with another, maybe you've used the word dating along with it, but if you have used that word, if that word was not a surprise to you on tonight, we need to know. So we want you to put it in the chat. Tell us, yes, I've used that word, or yes, I'm currently in what I describe as a situationship. And as we go on through the night, we might ask you to share a little more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to talk about dating. And many times, I think in situationships, they describe themselves as dating. And I want to define dating as spending time collecting data. You're collecting data about the person, and really collecting data to determine whether or not this could lead to a covenant relationship. Let me kind of talk about covenant relationship versus a situationship.
Yeah.
Um, there are, again, some stark differences. I think when we talk about covenant, of course, we are using a term that is in the Bible, uh,
Yes.
that God created covenant with man.
Yeah.
And in covenant, it meant that it was a promise that was made, that it
Yeah.
was binding, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It came with blessings. And so being in covenant meant that as a result of being in this relationship, there were blessings, or there were benefits, or there were things that were promised to you because we were in covenant relationship.
Yeah. I
Uh,
looked at that, and um it also says that biblically, covenant established the basis of a relationship, the conditions that existed as it relates to that relationship, the promises, you just shared that. Um, and this is funny, but it says, and the consequences if those conditions were unmet. So I
were
think
not
that's
met.
probably a whole nother show. But I think that's really good. And Candy, there is a scripture that we talked about, which was Deuteronomy 29:12. And it simply says this: you are standing here in order to enter into a covenant with the Lord your God, a covenant the Lord is making with you this day, and sealing with an oath. And remember, an oath is a promise.
Yes.
And so a promise that is not broken. It's kind of like come hell or high water, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's a good foundation when we talk about, what is covenant
Mhm.
versus situationship. You shared early, we got to understand biblically what the foundation is. What does this even mean? What does it mean? And some people maybe not even realizing that the word of God has that much to say about relationships. But the word of God is all about relationship,
Relationships, it is.
friendship, marital, getting to know one another, brother, sister. Oh my gosh, it's full of
Parent
stories.
child.
Parent, child, yes, yes.
Mhm.
It's full of stories of healthy and also unhealthy relationships. So, very appropriate. I love it.
Mhm. So again, covenant kind of comes, it means with something. Covenant is sacred. It's mutually agreed on that the two people agree to be in covenant relationship, meaning they're going to uphold the promises that are attached to the covenant.
Awesome.
Covenant is rooted in love and intimacy, and not just physical intimacy, but intimacy meaning that I'm going to get to know you, study you. I'm going to know your needs so that I can meet those needs. Whereas kind of situationship is rooted in what I describe and call transactional exchanges. Okay. And what I mean by
Mhm.
that, I'm going to be committed as long as I'm getting what I want. But the moment
Yeah.
I am no longer getting that, then deuces. I'm
Yeah.
out.
My grandmother used to say is tit for tat.
Absolutely. And that's
It's
what it
tit for tat.
creates. I'm
Yeah.
so glad you said that because that's what situationships create is this tit for tat. As long as I'm
Yeah.
getting what I want,
Yeah.
you may not get what you want, but as long as I'm getting what I want, I'm good.
Right. Right. Right.
However, in covenant, I am first making sure your needs are met before mine. So
Yeah.
I'm putting you before myself. I'm honoring you. I put you first, but in situationship, I first.
Right.
And
That's
that's a
good.
major difference. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
a covenant is binding, it's mutual, and there's accountability. Whereas in the situationship, again, I'm in it as long as I'm getting what I need and what I want. Okay.
That's good.
In covenant, it is always we, both, ours, us, we, two, together. It's always about the couple or the agreement.
Yeah.
Whereas in situationship, it's about me, myself, and I.
Yeah. I see where Cheryl, and good evening, Cheryl. Thank you for joining us. And this was so good what she said. She said, I've never used the term, but it's like now that you mention it, I have been in one, right? And so all of these descriptions that you're giving actually help us to see and to take a look at, some relationships that may not be current, but relationships we've had in the past and really kind of, fess up, see it for what it was. Um, she also made the comment, and I thought this was really good, that it was one sided, like you shared, and it was also very informal. Whereas, if we go back and talk about biblically, covenants were formal, and not just the covenant that God made with man, but biblically in business, when an oath was made or a covenant was made, when a man agreed to take somebody else's daughter as their wife and the exchanges that were part of that covenant, it was very, very serious and very formal. And that's why, it wasn't something that you easily broke, gave up on, decided to handle differently. So thank you, Cheryl. That was great. Great comments there. Um,
Absolutely.
if others have joined us, please. The question of the night is: have you found yourself in a situationship? Um, and if so, you don't have to give all the details. You can just say yes or no. But we're like, because we didn't realize this word even existed.
Mhm.
So if you've used that word before to describe a relationship you're in, let us know. This is good, Candy. This is really good. So I wanted to ask you, so, when you talked about covenant, you talked about it being about the couple. And a lot of people, if they do think about covenant in terms of relationship, they're at, I'm married, now I'm in a covenant. But, so what's the progression like? When we talk about dating and relationship, when does it become a covenant that we're in? And I think I'm asking this because often I see people dating, but they have the expectations one to another that really come with covenant. And we've been dating for 2 weeks. We're not in we're not in covenant yet. So how do we handle that place in a healthy way between the time we first meet and decide to date and the time that covenant begins to take place? What does that look like?
Yeah. And that is the dating process. And that's why I wanted to kind of define dating as
Yeah.
you're collecting data, you're learning, you're studying, You're identifying whether or not your needs could be met in this relationship, and whether this person can, whether you are willing and able to meet the needs of that individual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you ask questions. I think one of the downfalls in the process now of dating and getting to know someone, women don't ask questions. They talk, they give information.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they give too much information.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about what they like and how many children they want and where they want to live and all of these things. And sometimes, if a man, again, is not sincere and all he's looking for is a situationship, then he gives you back what you have said.
Right. Right.
I was looking at a house in Dunwoody. And you're thinking that because he's saying those things, that that means he's the one or that he is interested in future. And he's not. He is interested in getting what he wants and moving on.
Right.
And rather than giving information out, ask questions, study. How does he move around his friends?
Mm-hmm.
Does he bring you around his friends? And again, kind of going back to the characteristics between covenant versus situationship. Um, in a covenant, there is commitment. And so he is sincerely talking about future with you, but he's
Mm-hmm.
also doing things to demonstrate that I'm thinking about future with you.
That's good.
Whereas in situationship, it is not future oriented at all. There's no commitment and there is no future focus.
That's
And
good.
yeah, and you are steady thinking or wanting
Mm-hmm.
future. He won't sometimes, and I hear this a lot, put a name on what we're doing.
Yes. Yes.
He
Yeah.
won't put a name. Are we dating? Are we in a relationship? Are we mutually exclusive?
I think that's
He's
where
never picking it.
situationship came from. So it would be so interesting to understand, like, did that come from, would that originate from a man or did that originate from a woman in describing what we
Mm,
have here? Because I think probably women, it's more important for women to put a name on something.
yes.
They're the ones to say, well, what is this? What are we doing? More so than men are. And so it would be really interesting to understand kind of where that even originated from. But either way, it's also interesting to understand how or why we as women, or maybe anybody, is okay in that place. So in other words, is situationship, is that a real thing? You know, could we have just said, we're dating? Do people use that term anymore?
Not too much.
Not
I
too
don't
much.
hear it.
So
I don't hear
maybe
it.
maybe that's what situationship is. We don't say we're dating. We just say we're
We're,
in a situationship.
that could be.
Yeah.
But I really want our listeners and viewers to understand that in a situationship, again, it's not, there's no future focus.
Yeah.
And again, I think in dating and getting to know you, um, there is future focus.
Yeah.
Because again, you're trying to determine whether or not this is someone that I can be in a covenant relationship with.
Right. Right. And
Um,
covenant relationship being the goal when we talk about marriage.
yes.
Right. When we
So
talk
we're
about marriage.
moving in that direction
Yeah.
and we're doing things to establish if that is possible between the two of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it becomes evident that the relationship is more important than our individual needs.
Yes. Yes.
Versus in a situationship, the individual needs are more important than the relationship,
Yes. Yes.
which is why when those aren't being met, I'm willing to move on.
Yes. Yeah.
The
And I
commitment
think
is
it's
not there.
also cool to realize that So in this covenant relationship, if I'm focused on his needs and he's focused on my needs, guess what? All the needs are still being met, right?
Absolutely.
And then it's also important to say that over time, everybody's not always on 100, you know, but when your focus is on the other's needs, thank God, because there's going to come a time when it can't be, and you're going to want and need them to still be focused on yours. And so it's learning, and I say it like this often, it's learning to love beyond yourself, you
Absolutely.
know. And we have a lot of conversation going on today, and it's important as well. As women, as individuals, you must first love yourself. I believe you must love God first.
Hmm.
You then must love yourself, and when you truly love yourself, you gain an understanding of how to love others. But if you don't love yourself, I think we put so much weight on other people. We sometimes call that being needy, right? We put so much weight on other people to 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 try and help us feel what me and God should be able to feel ourselves. But understanding that we can do that and have a other focus in terms of meeting someone else's needs, in being giving and learning to love them in the ways that speak love to them. So I
Yeah.
mean, gosh, that gets us all the way over into love languages,
Hmm.
when we talk about meeting others needs. If I'm a touchy feely person, so I need to be hugged, I need my hand held, all of that. Now my husband, he likes that, but that's not his first need, right? So it's also learning. When we learn to love beyond ourselves, we're learning about that other person,
Exactly.
learning how to meet their needs,
And if
learning
you
what's
can,
important to
and if you
them.
can,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
if you
yeah,
can, even more importantly, yeah,
yes, yes,
because sometimes our differences may not allow us to be able to meet the need. Because what
right.
if that person's love language is physical touch and
Mhm.
affection, and you're not that kind of person?
Right, right, right.
Because when you mention love languages, I need to be loved in my love language to feel love. And
Yes,
so if I never get that from you, I am not going to feel love. And
yes.
so again, that's what your dating process is about. Again, you're collecting data to
Data. Yes,
determine whether we can proceed to covenant relationship. And
that's
another point
good.
you made, which I think is so important, is that in covenant, once you enter covenant relationship, you are willing to do whatever it takes to make that relationship work, even when the other person is not.
Yeah,
So you're going to do the
yeah,
work.
buddy.
And
That's a
because you're
big one.
doing the work, the other person is going to realize, you know what? They really care. I need
Yeah,
to kind of get over myself
right.
and join in. And so both of you agree to do that
Yeah,
100% of the time, not when
yeah,
it feels good, not when, again, I'm happy, but all the time.
yeah,
So in that moment or when those times come when I'm not feeling it, because you stay committed, because you stay focused on quote unquote the relationship,
hmm,
I'm probably going to come around.
yes,
I'm going
and
to
a lot
realize
sooner. Yeah, yeah,
you care. You're in
yeah,
it. You're not
yeah,
going to walk out. You're not going to abandon me. You're here. So it makes me realize I need to do the work too. I've got to,
yeah.
whether it's come out of my feelings, whether it's forgive,
Hmm.
because sometimes, we talked about forgiveness last time. I need to forgive you
Right.
and again come out of my feelings. But you're going to do that even when the other person is not.
Yeah, yeah,
And it reciprocates because when you're not feeling it, they're going to do it. And
yeah.
that's what makes it covenant because, again, the relationship is what is important.
That's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
the
I see a
relationship is
few more people have joined us. I see Kim.
yes.
I
Hi,
see Muna.
Keto,
I
Yuna.
see I think Shakira or that I saw a little bit earlier. Thank you all for joining us. The question of the evening is, have you ever described a relationship you're in as a situationship? Have you ever used that word? That's what we're talking about tonight. Now, Candy, I couldn't help but think as you were talking then about being in a relationship, doing everything you can to make it work, when that's not being reciprocated from the beginning. That's not easy, granted, but it's also not easy when we feel like we've tried that before and it hadn't worked at all. So you you have to touch a little bit, just a little bit. You got to touch a little bit on the importance of healing from past relationships so that you can really be this all in this current relationship, and it can be a relationship and one that is headed toward covenant and not just a situationship. So eh, how do you got to talk about, you can't bring all that baggage from that past relationship that didn't work. Is going to affect you, not if, but when the time comes that is going to be you for a minute, and you're giving and you're not feeling, that being totally reciprocated. um so talk about that a little bit, because I think that's really real.
Yeah, because that's that triggering or that reactivity that sometimes occurs, and
Mhm.
your partner is saying, where's that coming from?
Right.
Sometimes, many times, it plays out in terms of trust when you've been hurt
Yes,
and you
yes.
haven't allowed yourself to heal and do the work. And oftentimes, again, it's forgiveness work. It
Yes.
is, healing internally, letting go, um, moving out of a bad relationship, taking time to sort out, how did you contribute to it? What were the red flags sometimes that you ignored?
Right.
And why did
Right.
you ignore them? Um, One of the things I have found is that many times it is because when you're in a relationship or when you are dealing with someone, we sometimes don't tell ourselves the truth.
Right.
And when we don't tell ourselves the truth, it allows you to ignore red flags. It allows you to ignore things that you should be paying attention to that would allow you to say, whoa, whoa, wait, this is not okay.
Right. Something's
He
not right
didn't
here.
mean it. She didn't mean it.
Hmm.
They were having a bad day. And so we have to tell ourselves the truth rather than make excuses or justify. That's how little injuries become wounds.
Yeah.
And of course, the
Mhm.
wound then has to be healed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you have to kind of
Absolutely.
take the time. That goes back to that self-love. I'm going to
Right.
love myself enough to restore myself,
Yes.
to get back to the good place so I can be present in a healthy way. I can
Hmm.
show up in a relationship and be my best self.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know. And
That's
so that
good.
becomes important. Yes. Yeah,
When you
we do
talk
have to
about
heal.
trust, it just made me think about, I think in some of the times that I've had in my marriage, and I've been married 32,
Mm,
I think I'm going into the 33rd year. But there have been some challenging times. There absolutely have been. And there have been those times where I said, you know what? I am married to another human being, which, number one, we are all imperfect.
mm,
Um, I am going to trust God through this moment until I can get myself back around to where I'm feeling it all. And so even when you talk about um, doing what you should do and what you're supposed to do in covenant, even when you're not feeling it, for me,
Mhm.
those are the times when I said, I'm just going to trust God. I'm going to trust God right here. I'm
Mhm.
going to put my trust in God. And that is what helps you to move sometimes when you're not feeling it, And when we say feeling it, that emotion, and God knows as women, sometimes our feelings change multiple times a day. It can depend on your age, it can depend on the weather, you know. Um, but I have a friend, she always says, do the right thing because it's the right thing to do,
Yeah,
do the right thing. And so this also says to me, Candy, we're also talking about maturity. We're
absolutely.
talking about covenant. You gotta be mature, and that's why maybe years ago we would look at our kids and even ourselves and say, "Y'all don't need to get married yet. You're not ready for marriage, right?" And so there's a certain level of maturity, and so at minimum, I think it's important to say to those that are watching tonight, that may be dating, and even to those that may watch via replay, is that saying that you're ready to be married is saying a lot, and it requires a certain level of maturity um, in how we handle ourselves, how we handle others, and then that faith in God. I don't know how you would do it without that.
Mhm.
I just don't know how that would work, right? Thank you. I'm laughing at Eunice's comment. She said, I have never used situationship. That wasn't a term back in the days when I dated and got married. No, it was not. I think I just heard it like December of last year, Eunice. So I'm with you. And we wonder if it has taken place of the word dating,
David.
because that's what Una used. She says, when I dated, that wasn't a term. Maybe they don't say, or people don't use dating anymore.
Mhm.
Maybe that's even too formal.
Right.
What's the connotation? If I tell you I'm dating, what am I saying? If I tell you me and Joe are dating, what am I saying? What does that mean?
I agree. And I think dating has come to be synonymous with maybe commitment. If I'm dating
Hmm.
you,
Yeah,
although sometimes people define, can we date others or are we dating exclusively? But I
yeah,
think in terms in general, yes, the dating kind of has become more is serious. Whereas again, in
hmm,
situationship, it's open. It's not a commitment.
right.
And so I can exit out, I can exit left when it's not
Hmm.
working.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Also, in terms of kind of one of the differences, and you mentioned maturity, I think you have to be mature to be able to put the other person's needs ahead of your own.
Yes, you do.
Hmm.
100,
Hmm.
100%. Yeah.
And when we see this selfishness in a relationship where I'm not able to do that, and I come in getting and wanting what I want, not being sacrificial, because again,
Right.
covenant relationship is sacrificial. I can
Yeah.
sacrifice what I want or what I desire, or even a need sometimes to make
Yeah.
sure you're okay. That
Yes.
does take maturity.
It does. It does.
And um,
And so
there's a
often, people kind of put that in the category of you're letting them do this to you, you're letting them do that to you. But sacrificial giving, or sharing, and that level of maturity is not letting anyone do anything to you. It is making a choice, and it is understanding covenant, and it is understanding what covenant really means and what it means when we make that promise or oath to one another,
Mhm.
right? And so I think sometimes, probably in our generations that are much younger, and a lot of times they've seen so much. Just because mom and daddy was married doesn't mean you've ever seen covenant. And so, you have to even talk about how can I, and I've done some premarital counseling, for a couple that neither one had ever seen a successful marriage or one in covenant, just had never seen it. But now they're deciding that that's what they want to do.
Be in covenant, yeah. So how
Yeah.
do they even know how to begin and what that
What does
looks
it
like?
look like? Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
why this discussion is so important.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so let me kind of list or give you some characteristics of covenant love. It's giving. You
Hmm.
mentioned that.
Yes.
It's sacrificial, that I am going to sacrifice for you. It serves. It's a serving love. I am willing to do for you. And it's freely given.
Hmm.
It doesn't come with conditions or it's not transactional. I'm going to do it because you need it or you want it.
Right. Right. Right.
It's submissive. And submissive, when I say submissive, I'm meaning that I don't always have to be right, that I can
Hmm.
submit to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can let you win.
Right.
Many times in the counseling setting, I see this win-lose dynamic in couples
Hmm.
all the time. And so in terms of being submissive, that I can be humble, I can show up with humility to
Yes.
you.
Yes.
It supports. It supports your dreams, your desires, your wishes. And
Hmm.
remember, this is reciprocal. This is not one doing it for the other. It is reciprocal. It goes back and forth. And so when you have all of these dynamics happening in a reciprocal way, number one, it's going to feel good in the relationship, but it's
Yeah.
also going to create this, what I call synergy,
Yeah.
that it's like it's exciting and it's thrilling, and you can't wait to again
Yeah.
show up for that
Yeah.
person and meet that person's needs because you're going to get the same energy. It's kind. It's
Hmm.
kind. There are many couple relationships where they are just not kind to one another.
Kind to each other. Yeah.
You can be absolutely mean. And so covenant love is kind. It's understanding. And so I'm going to take the time, even when I don't see it the way that you see it, or I wouldn't have done it the way that you kind of carried out something. I'm going to try and understand. I'm going to ask questions. Help me understand that so
Hmm.
that I can
Hmm.
accept it and be okay with it. So it's
Yeah.
understanding versus that don't make sense to me. I don't even know why you did that. And then you shut down. The person shuts down.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's not going to occur. I'm going to have enough dialogue with you. I'm going to be interested enough in you to have a conversation to get me to a point of understanding you,
Right.
why you moved that way, why you did that. Even if I don't agree with it, I can
Yeah.
understand it and I can accept it.
Yeah. So
Uh,
communication required. Open and clear communication required. Yeah.
yeah, because I said dialogue several times, didn't I?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's your
Yeah.
glue. That's
Hmm.
your glue in your relationship. Your communication is your
It
glue.
is. It is.
And it has to work.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, that's one my next bullet point, that it's accepting. It's accepting of differences. It's accepting of flaws. It's accepting of things that I don't like.
Hmm.
I can accept it. But again, I'm going to have a dialogue, and in that dialogue, I'm going to help you understand why I didn't like it. And
Right.
because you reciprocate, you're going to say, you know what? I won't do that again. Thank you for
Hmm.
letting me know. And so again, it's that synergy that gets created. It's gentle, it's forgiving. Covenant
Mm,
love is forgiving,
yeah.
and you learn to forgive over and over and over again. You learn how to forgive. Again, it
Beautiful.
becomes the foundation that even when things go wrong, you know that you can come back, you can restore yourselves back to the
Mm-hmm.
good place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other final characteristic that I kind of came up with in terms of covenant love is that it's laboring. And what I mean by that is you're
Mm-hmm.
going to do the work because labor is work,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes,
so
yes,
you need you
yes.
to do the work again to stay in that good place, to get back in that good place when you fall short. But
Right.
you're going to labor. You're going to you're going to do what's necessary. And again, even when the other person is not, because
Yeah.
the relationship is important to you. You value the relationship. And remember, in covenant, you made a promise to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You made a promise to do that work. You made a promise to show up in a way that I'm going to make sure you're okay so that I can be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Mhm.
You know, one of the things that we had talked about too is that when you discover you're in a situationship, um, that is often when people kind of end up in your office,
Mhm.
but also that there are times when people are married, they've they are up under what we would all call a covenant, but they're not really in a covenant relationship. The covenant exchanges that you described are totally missing. So I'm married, but guess what? I'm in a situationship, right?
Yes.
Um, that's hard.
And how you know that is again because it becomes about me and I and myself versus we versus
Mm-hmm.
the relationship.
Yeah.
It becomes tit for tat. So I didn't get what I wanted the last time. So when you ask me for something or you want me to do something, I'm not going to do it. Not because I can't, but because you didn't do what I wanted you to do.
Right.
So
Right.
again, we have this transactional
Mm-hmm.
exchange going on.
Yeah.
And that I say to my couples all the time that tit for tat always leads to the demise of the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it
So
just doesn't
I
feel
heard
good.
someone say one time, in a relationship, if any one person wins, then both lose. So there's no room for tit for tat or competition, you know, in a relationship.
I agree.
That's good.
I
That's good.
agree. I agree.
So Candy, um, all right. So how do you avoid finding yourself in a situationship? And I think that you mentioned some of that a minute ago, because we said, you know what, we can be married, and it seems like we made an oath, we should be under covenant, but as I look at the descriptors, my God, we're in a situationship. So we know now that you can learn, right? You can learn and grow. So talk to us some more about that, and really, again, how do we avoid finding ourselves in a situationship saying, how in the world did I get here? How did
Well,
I get here?
the first thing I think is knowing your value and knowing your
Mm-hmm.
worth, knowing whose you are, knowing
Mm-hmm.
that you deserve to be in a healthy, loving, reciprocal relationship that allows you to thrive and grow and build you up versus a relationship that is doing this, pulling and taking and
Taken
you're
from
not
you.
getting back.
Mm-hmm.
So when you know your value, you're able to say, that doesn't feel right. That's not okay. I'm not going to allow you to treat me like that.
Right.
That I'm going to show up for you, So I need you to show up for me. It's not going to be this one way relationship.
Yeah.
So knowing your value, which also means self love.
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, I love boundaries. So you're going to set a boundary that says, no, I don't think so. That's not working for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Mm-hmm.
can walk away,
Yeah.
even if it means you have to be alone.
Yeah. That's
You
good.
also need to know what I call and describe your negotiables and your non negotiables in a relationship. Meaning, there are things that you absolutely have to be happy, to be
Mm-hmm.
okay in the relationship. Those are your non negotiables. There's no leaning on that. This has to happen, this has to be present.
Yes.
For me, integrity is one of my non negotiables. Your word needs to mean something. I need to be able to count on your word, especially as we are quote unquote dating.
Yes.
If I can't count on your word means nothing. We can't progress.
Right. Right.
So knowing what your negotiables and non-negotiables are, that prevents you from being in a situationship. Because when you don't know what those are, you allow and tolerate
Mm-hmm.
things that you shouldn't tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you have, and that means you have to kind of know yourself. You have to
Yeah.
take time. You have to learn from previous relationships. And many times we don't take the time to do that. Okay, what
Right.
happened here?
Yeah.
How did
Yes.
I contribute? What
Yes.
did I allow, tolerate, accept that I shouldn't have?
Yes.
So you're always kind of pulling out lessons from tragedy, from broken hearts, from relationships that
Mm-hmm.
failed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So knowing, you got to know your negotiables and non-negotiables. And when they can't be met, that lets you know you need to kind of move on. This is not going to lead to covenant
Yes.
because there's things that I need that are not going to be met. You have to recognize red flags. And when you see red flags, know that that
Mm-hmm.
means stop.
Yes.
Red flag doesn't mean, oh, that's a red flag, but keep going. Red flags mean stop, pause,
Yes.
pull back.
Yes.
Have a standard. Have a standard. Um, there needs to be certain things that are not okay.
Mm-hmm.
Even again, if it means you're going to be alone.
Right.
Uh, this is a big one. Take your time.
Yes, goodness.
Take your time.
That's so
Um,
important.
yes, because the saying is when you first meet someone, you meet their representative. You don't meet who they actually are.
I've
You
never
meet
heard that.
you meet the representative, the person who shows up. But if you take your time,
Ooh-wee.
meaning that you don't get emotionally invested and attached early,
Mm-hmm.
you study, you watch, you observe, you learn, you pay attention
Mm-hmm.
before you allow yourself to become emotionally invested and attached to someone.
That's really good.
Yeah. And
That's
sometimes that
really
just
good.
means 3 months.
Yes.
We're not
Yeah.
talking about a long time.
Right. Right.
Sometimes in 3 months, the colors come out.
You know what you're dealing with. Right.
Yeah. So
Right.
taking your time. And again, realizing that dating is for data collection.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a rehearsal for marriage.
Woo! Now that's big.
And what I mean by that is you
That's
don't
big.
do what you would do in a marital relationship when you meet someone, when you're dating
Yes.
someone.
Yes. Yes. Mm.
And that creates situationship because
Yes, it
now you're
does.
doing all of these things thinking that, well, shouldn't I get? No. He's saying,
Right.
he or she is
Right.
saying no. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. A whole nother set of expectations. And I've especially seen this to show up around financial things. Even the expectations around, okay, we're dating now. He's supposed to pay my rent. So I often call it you're doing married things, but there's no covenant. You know, so I even think that prayer is different. A wife and a husband praying for each other than it is if you are two people that are dating and you're praying for one another. I think that prayer is different. I believe that the authority that you have in the realm of the spirit is different of someone that you are in covenant with under a marriage covenant and are now walking as one. I also, I pray for married couples differently than I do dating couples because I understand that when you pray for married couples, say you're just praying for one of them, whatever goes on with one is going to affect the other
Mhm.
and vice versa, right? And that's how it is when you're under covenant and in that covenant relationship. So I could do a list on this one, of the married things that we do. Then you get married and you stop doing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so good what you said. Sometimes we're trying to practice.
Yeah. Or I think some women think if I do all of those things, then he'll know that he should marry me or that I'm
Yeah,
marriageable,
yeah,
if that's a word.
yeah.
And that's not true. I
Right,
think
right.
as women, and I was really hoping we would have some men on tonight to hear their side, to know if did they create
Yeah.
that word. But
Who
I think
invented the situationship? Yeah,
yes, yeah, we need to find out the origin of that word. Where did
yeah,
that come from? Because that
yeah.
that's how it's being described. I'm in a situationship, and I mean readily saying that. And again, I think situationship has some certain characteristics that it does
Right,
not lead to covenant.
right,
It
right, right.
is quote unquote, and think about a situation in terms of the definition or how we use it.
Mm-hmm.
Situation is usually temporary, right?
Exactly, exactly.
It's temporary. So if
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a situationship, that almost means temporarily I'm giving myself to you. But oftentimes, in giving myself to you, I'm doing all of these things that I should be doing in a covenant
Mm-hmm.
relationship. So I become disillusioned, disappointed, hurt, betrayed because it doesn't result in what I think it's
Mm-hmm.
going to result in. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the most important takeaway tonight is that understand that if you're in a situationship and these characteristics are present, that they are not going to lead
Right.
to covenant.
Yeah.
It's just not. The dynamics do not allow for it.
Yeah. And so good there. It might lead to you getting married, but it won't lead to covenant, which gets us back to where we were. You can be married and still in a situationship.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. That's
Mhm.
good. That's good.
And again, that marital relationship is now based on transactions
Yes. Tit for
and
tat.
not reciprocity.
Yeah, that's good, Candy.
Mhm.
So you were going to tell us a little bit about a wonderful new setting that you have called Majestic Woman.
Yes. So um, I love my work with women. I love women becoming their best selves and just becoming majestic.
Hmm.
So I have created a new program. It's called the Majestic Woman, and I'm introducing her in July. And the majestic woman is a woman who never, ever finds herself in a situationship.
Come on now.
And that is because of who she is and her characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
A majestic woman knows her value and her worth. She also knows that God is her source.
Yeah.
So she doesn't enter situationships trying to get her rent paid, okay, or getting something from someone, because she knows God is her source and that God is going to
Right.
meet her needs.
Right.
She honors her temple,
Mm-hmm.
okay. She and this is my favorite line. She doesn't tolerate foolishness.
Yeah. Period.
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 Period. She
Right.
does not tolerate foolishness.
Mm-hmm.
She values sisterhood.
Yeah.
You know, I have heard hundreds, I can say hundreds of women say, "Oh, I don't deal with women.
Right.
I don't like women. I don't get along with women." But
Mm-hmm.
a majestic woman knows she needs her sisters and she
Yeah.
values sisterhood and she keeps a royal circle.
Yeah.
So we've got to change the trajectory of how we as women relate to each other and know we need each other, that there is something that we give one another, that we hold each other accountable, we build each other up. But I think the greatest thing that we do for one another, we get stuff done.
We really do.
We get
Yeah.
stuff done.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because if I don't know how, you know somebody who does, and we
Yes.
get
Yes.
done.
That's
We
good.
handle things. Yes. Yes. A majestic woman is resilient
Mm-hmm.
because, again, we all go through things. But our resiliency allows us to bounce back, and we bounce back because resiliency means that I come back even stronger.
There you go. Yes. Goodness.
And oftentimes we come back stronger because of my sisterhood.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing about a majestic woman, and this is so powerful, she is aware of her gifting
Mm-hmm.
and she operates in it. If she's
Mm-hmm.
not operating in it, she is developing herself so that she can operate and flow in it.
Oh
And she
yeah.
also, again, through her sisterhood, is building that up and identifying what her gifting is.
That's good right there.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this is
So
another
will
one.
we? Yeah. How will we? Will you be able to register for it? What is this gonna look like? What is the setting? Is this
Okay.
online,
Yeah,
in
thank
person?
you for
Or-
asking. So for July and August, I am creating a Facebook group.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to be sharing and giving information. And then in the fall, we are going to go full steam into a class where we teach all of these characteristics, kind of breaking them down so that at the end, there's almost a graduation.
Oh, good.
A majestic woman.
Yes, I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. So, in fact, I have a focus group now. And each of my women in the focus group are creating little videos about the characteristics. So we're going to be introducing the characteristics of the majestic woman over the summer, over
Okay.
July and August. And then in September, we're going to start, and that's when you'll be able to register for the class and take the class and become a majestic woman. So I'm
That
excited.
is
It's going to be
powerful. I
so
love
good.
this.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I just say I love it.
Yeah. Another
Mhm.
characteristic, and this is an important one, and this kind of goes back to what we kind of talked about in terms of maturity. A majestic woman always responds and doesn't react.
Ooh wee. Yes. Yeah.
So emotionally, she handles her emotions. She
Yeah.
doesn't show up emotionally out of control. She
Hmm.
learns how to respond instead of react.
Instead of reacting. That's good, Candy. I love it.
So stay tuned. I'm going to be introducing the majestic woman. I want everyone to become a majestic woman.
Yes.
And it's going to be a fun ride. It's going to be a fun summer. And I'd also like you to talk about what you have going on this summer. You have some awesome activities
Oh my
going on in
goodness.
the ark.
We do. I think we're most excited about, we have a summer book club, and we haven't done that before. So generally on Thursdays at 8 p.m., we have a weekly Bible study. But it's summertime. We want to give everybody a break. Um, everybody, including Pastor, and time with family. But at the same time, we want to stay connected because we have certainly bonded. And so, not coming together every Thursday, it's just been a little bit difficult. But what we're doing, we're reading a book together called Influence 365. And we have also created a Facebook group, and it is called A Relevant Word. And so I invite you all to all follow me on social media on my Facebook at Victoria Burse. And you can also look for the Art International. And I would love for you to join us. We'll go back afterwards in the replay, and I'll put a little bit more information in the comments. So we are excited about doing that. And we continue to meet every first, second, and third Sunday. We're online via Zoom. First and third, we're actually in person right in Riverdale, Georgia. And so we are enjoying that and hoping that summer doesn't go too fast. It's kind of going kind of fast now.
Yes, it
It
is.
is. It
2 weeks
is.
from today, it's going to be the 4th of July. Just can't
I
even believe
know, unbelievable. It's like
it.
when Fourth of July hits. That's it.
It's
Summer's
over.
summer is over. Right. It's been a joy being here with you again. I love these times. If you haven't, go back and check out. There's another talk it therapy that we did about forgiveness and relationships as well. Again, please check out the other videos. Please bookmark them, share them with your friends. Again, I'm going to take this link and send it back out to all my single nieces and nephews because some of them are probably in situationships. Whether they would admit it or not, I don't know. But I'm absolutely going to share it with them. This has been really good. And it's a joy just sitting here able to talk, discuss, and we're teaching, sharing information, desiring to pour into men and women of God so that what you do in your life is healthy, especially in the area of your relationships. So it's been great to be with you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And it looks like Cheryl is asking a question. She says, my brother asked, is safe to say relationship is good in exchange for services in a covenant and situationship? I'm not sure I'm understanding that, Cheryl. If you could
Mhm.
expound on that a little more, because I don't want to not answer any questions that you have. So if
Right.
I have not addressed a question or a comment or a thought, please let us know before we bring this to a close.
Hmm.
I'm not quite sure. Do you kind of understand what
Yeah, I'm kind of
I'm
reading.
asking?
I'm missing it a little bit. And I'm wondering if he's saying, is it safe to say the relationship, um, even if you're not in a covenant relationship? But, so like you say, we're dating, we're in a relationship. I'm wondering if that's what she's asking. So, Cheryl, please clarify. And I'm glad that, and so that must be Kenneth with her. She said her and her brother looked at it together, so that's awesome. But
Good,
feel
good. Oh,
free
we did
to,
have a man.
yes,
Yay!
we did. Please feel free. You can comment still, even on social media. You can comment on the YouTube video, and we'll take a look at that. And love to do what we can to answer the question. So awesome.
Well, thank you all for joining. Stay tuned. We'll be coming back again. I'll be coming back again and again. Stay tuned for the introduction of the majestic woman, and that will take off in July. through Facebook, and then we'll have the program starting in September. So stay tuned for that. And again, thank you for taking the time to join me tonight.
Yes.
I
Thank you
appreciate
all.
your time and commitment and loving the discussions and your comments. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Good
everyone. Have a
night.
good evening.